Hi, I'm Glenn Gilmore. I'm a educator in emerging technologies, and I'm also a VMware influencer. And we're very fortunate to have with us today Jason Conyard, who is the CIO at VMware. Jason, welcome.
Thanks, Glenn. Good to be with you.
Thank you. Jason, VMware recently released its multi-cloud maturity index. And in that report, 3,000 enterprises were surveyed globally, and a whopping 95% of them said that multi-cloud is critical to business success. Can you tell us why you think multi-cloud is important for business success, the advantages of it?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think in some cases, Glenn, I think companies have got there deliberately, and in other cases, they've got there kind of by accident. But I think of a couple of things when I think of multi-cloud. I definitely think of resilience. Having diversity in the things that, the infrastructure, the technologies, the vendor dependency and such. I think that's really important.
Sure.
I think it's scalability. I think the last 3 years have proven that, we can do a lot of things, leveraging cloud-based services. And I think leveraging multiple cloud-based services. Definitely think of cost efficiency and being in a place where you can negotiate with multiple vendors and partners to address the needs of your business and do that in an efficient and effective way. Scalability, of course, also has another dimension to it, which is obviously performance. That's something that I definitely think about. And back to kind of the cost piece, there's also the commercial contractual piece there, which is making sure that you can keep your partners competitive, not just in the dollars you pay, but also in the terms of the agreements you have. So I think having multiple players in the mix, yes, it increases complexity to some element, and I think that's something we can certainly talk about as well. But I think that it also gives businesses more freedom.
Can you also identify some accelerants to multi-cloud that might have inspired more companies to move to multi-cloud?
Well, I can speak for myself and say that as we were, going into and through the pandemic, physical presence in data centers and things came more challenging in some regards. Just the hurdles people would need to safely navigate physical space. So I think that was an accelerant. I think also businesses recognizing that there were new opportunities and new challenges that they needed to consider meant that leveraging multi-clouds allowed them to do that. Their businesses need to pivot. If you actually look, a lot of retail businesses had to reimagine how they engaged and worked with their customers. So, and that's true in almost every walk of life, that every organization needed to find new ways of doing things, and they needed to do that almost immediately. So I think multi-cloud and SaaS-based solutions definitely were a catalyst of change there.
And as enterprises look at multi-cloud, one of the questions that comes up, is there a sweet spot in multi-cloud? Is there a particular number of, when a company looks at going multi-cloud, is there a special number of multi-cloud of cloud that they should be aspiring to for the best efficiencies?
So is there a recipe that people can copy?
Precisely.
Yeah.
Precisely.
I think the answer is no, because people's tastes are different, their needs are different. But I do think that the key, if you will, the key in the recipe is multi. Being limited. I think a lot of companies in their kind of the burgeoning of cloud services kind of picked their horse, if you will, chose their cloud provider and decided to ride them. And I'm sure if you're a cloud provider, you probably thought that was wonderful. But I do believe that upon reflection, a lot of leaders, technology leaders, myself included, look at those scenarios and say, okay, that was really good for learning, but now we're in a situation where our estate is now very distributed, not necessarily well orchestrated, and we've created a lot of risks and considerations that maybe we don't have a good handle on. So I think they're things I certainly think about. So not one recipe others can copy. It's really a recognition of understanding your business and understanding the role that multi-cloud scenarios can provide you.
VMware has a great phrase, cloud smart. Can
Yeah.
you help us understand what this concept is, what it means in real life, and how is it different from how things have been done before?
I think the in essence it is the same and different. It is the realization that cloud technologies afford us new capability, the ability to automate workloads, the ability
Mhm.
to scale in ways never conceived before, the ability to provide infrastructure and data center like services and software services to businesses that could never have imagined owning those things themselves. I think that's kind of the rich opportunity, if you will. But you've got to be smart about how you leverage those technologies. You've got to be smart about how you architect the solutions that you're going to need. You've got to be smart about how you manage the costs associated with those solutions. So I think being cloud smart means that you fundamentally understand the capabilities that cloud services afford you and afford your business, but you understand them well enough to make sure that that doesn't then bite you later. You don't want to be in a situation where you've overextended yourself, or that you're running up costs that you don't have control over, or that you have inherently designed something without redundancy and resilience at the core of it. So I think cloud smart is really about understanding what the potential is and then managing it to meet your business needs in a thoughtful, optimized way.
Thank you. Thank you. Jason, you've also written a lot about the notion that CIOs need to be both defensive and offensive in their strategies and approach. What do you mean by that?
It kind of connects back to the earlier points, which is that on the one hand, whether you're a small business that wants to have an internet presence and can leverage cloud service providers to give you that capability and then to scale. For some businesses it's about scaling for volume. In some cases it's about being available in other geographies, or being able to scale in other geographies. So I think that there are those considerations. I think as well, just understanding what what you're spending your money on is key. And I think far too often, especially with distributed decision making, so larger companies, so we talked about smaller companies, larger companies, they kind of have the reverse problem, which is that even if you have an IT department, in many cases technology choices are distributed, technology decision making is distributed. So you have parts of the business going off and making investments in one place or another place, but ultimately the board and the CEO and the CFO is going to hold the CIO accountable for that spend, but they don't necessarily have line of sight. So I think offensive means you can get out there and you can scale and you can meet the needs of your business. Defensive means making sure that you've really got your hands around what does this mean financially, but also what does it mean for privacy? What does it mean for security? What does it mean for managing risks and compliance in your organization? I think you have to be able to play offense and defense in those regards.
Jason, you raised the topic of cost, and in VMware's multi-cloud maturity index, the report found that 76% of enterprises found that they needed to lessen their cloud costs. And I have two questions from that.
Yeah.
Why are these companies finding that their cloud costs are out of control? And what can they do to bring those costs down without sacrificing the offensive capabilities of multi-cloud?
Yeah, I think actually I'll definitely answer your question there, Glenn. But I would
Thank
also
you.
say, what is it that the 24% are doing? Is it that they've really got their hands around it, or is it that they don't care, or that they don't understand? So I think that would be an interesting question.
Interesting point.
Yeah, I think that would be an interesting question to understand. But what are the 76% saying? I think what they're saying is that they recognize that that it is a tool that's getting used in their environment, that it is a tool that they're incurring costs around, and maybe they don't have the best handle on it, or they're getting a handle on it, and kind of as they do that, they're eyes wide open moment, they're realizing it's there's a lot there. And I think in the past, let's just wind the clock back a little bit. In the past, you would have had a data center or data centers. Maybe you own them, maybe you lease them, maybe it's a colo scenario, and that would be an asset, a capital asset that would have been being managed on the books very, very carefully. More often than not, the conversation you would have had is, can we get the storage we need? Can we get the server capability we need? Can we get the networking equipment we need to meet that need? Today, that's often not the concern. The concern is more overwhelmingly, oh my goodness, people are lighting stuff up and they're letting it spin in the cloud, and we have no control over it, and we're incurring the costs. And then we're having to play defense. So I think that's really the opportunity there, is to kind of get a handle on it, understand where you're spending your money, understanding whether that spend is aligning with the priorities of the organization. Is it helping your customers? Is it helping generate new revenue? Is it helping you with your research and your development as an organization? So I think that's what companies and certainly leaders need to do, which is, get their hands around that cost. And I think that's what the 76% are telling us.
And Jason, you used the phrase that they're lighting up things, or they're lighting up additional cloud. When we look at multi-cloud, what are some common risks that enterprises have in making that transition to multi-cloud? And are there some lessons from that transition that enterprises should be mindful of?
Well, I think making sure that they have clear principles about what services they're going to use and where. So one of the things I say to my team in particular, is I think it's wonderful that a lot of the cloud providers, probably all the cloud providers, have unique capabilities within their respective clouds. And of course, they do this for a couple of reasons. One is to differentiate, why cloud A over cloud B or cloud C. That's certainly true. But also they do it to be sticky, because they want to provide unique value to their customers. So, their customers re-enabled. And if I was a little cynical, also it's harder for those customers potentially to transition from one to another. So I think what I would say is, it's important for companies to do that in a meaningful, thoughtful way. There is nothing wrong saying we want this particular capability from cloud provider A because we see the value, it helps our business in a unique way. But it should be a conscious decision, and the trade-offs should be understood. And there should arguably even be a plan to understand how you would mitigate for that if you needed to commercially make a change. So I think that's really important. But I would extend that also to other topics. I would talk about it in terms of data sovereignty. How do you make sure that you continue to own your data? Where does your data reside? How do you ensure you're meeting and demonstrating that you meet your compliance obligations? From a privacy perspective, I think privacy is going to be an increasingly hot topic with consumers and businesses alike, as people meet both regulations, but more than regulation, honestly, is how they sustain and grow the trust they have with their customers. So I think they're going to be important considerations. So I think what I would say in netting it all out is getting your architecture right from a technical perspective, but also getting your architecture right from a business perspective, understanding what it means for your business and making those decisions consciously, not unconsciously, which is what I think often happens.
Jason, you raise an important point about how enterprises should be making a conscious decision when they think about multi-cloud and cloud. Yet one of the problems that was raised by VMware's multi-cloud maturity index was a finding that about 1/3 of the enterprises that were surveyed admitted that they really don't have in-house talent, in-house expertise to guide their strategy in cloud or multi-cloud. And what sort of guidance would you have in that scenario for those who recognize that?
I think I would make a more generic statement, but it connects strongly back to your point, which is that in business, we're about getting things done. We often think about what our needs are for today. That's just a fact, a reality. But I think strong leadership also requires us to be thinking about what our needs are, not just for the now, but also for the medium and the long term. And that includes developing and evolving your talent. So it's hard to not look at your phone and see an article, or open the paper and see an article about artificial intelligence right now, or talking about machine learning, or a host of other technologies that are evolving that have both dystopian as well as utopian potential. But if you want to recognize that potential, whether we're talking about AI or we're talking about clouds or whatever, you've got to have people that understand them, understand the technology potential, the concerns, the risks, the opportunities, but you've also got to have people that are constantly learning and evolving their talent. And I think companies should not forget about that as we go through a period of financial constraint, which I think is inevitable and positive, by the way. You should not forget about how you continue to grow and develop your talent for what's ahead of you, and how you make sure that you're taking advantage of it. Look, I can tell you right now, every single one of my peers in a medium to large size company is having a conversation with their CEO or their CTOs about AI, ML, multi-cloud, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. If they're not, I would be absolutely astonished. And the question will be, what does it mean to us? What opportunities does it present? And if you don't have a team of people that are in spending time to understand that and unlock that potential, then you're not going to be competitively set up for the future. And I think that's the important thing.
Jason, can you tell me how you're thinking about AI and machine learning from a broad perspective, and then specifically about how it might be used to eliminate some of the cloud chaos?
Yeah, I think, look, the technology is still very much burgeoning. I think we read more about the potentials of the technology than the limitations of the technology. We're absolutely playing with all of the technologies that you hear about in the market. We're imagining how they might be leveraged to, manage workloads efficiently and economically to meet criteria that we have. Maybe it's around resilience, maybe it's around cost, et cetera, et cetera. So there are lots of potentials there. But I also think that I think it's still early days. Very candidly, I think it's early days. You asked me, what are we doing about it, and let me connect it back to the people piece of the conversation. We actually have an internal hackathon. We do them all the time for different topics. We have one going on right now around AI. We like to be very inclusive in how we approach hackathons, and the reason is not just feel good. So there is a feel good component. Hey, I can be included even if I'm in a different team, or maybe I'm not a developer or a programmer, but I can still get involved in thinking about ideation and such. But we like to get those teams together and set them real challenges to think about how we solve problems on behalf of our customers. How do we solve problems that are real to our business that could be transferable or translatable to our customers? And yeah, you get the touchy-feely ones that seem more niche or more fun or humorous, and there's nothing wrong with that. But I really like to think about how the technologies can make the world a better place, make things better for our customers for the future. So hackathons is definitely a way we do it. We also really encourage people from a learning perspective. If someone's keen to learn about a technology and they've got some really practical thoughts on the technology, or maybe just theoretical thoughts on the technology, we invest in them. We give them space and time to go and explore over and above their other opportunities and responsibilities.
I love that VMware is keeping it focused on aligning with business objectives to help customers in the process. Jason, I can't let you leave without asking one final question, which is, where is VMware in its multi-cloud journey? And as one of the world's largest software companies, are there lessons that all enterprises might learn from VMware's own multi-cloud journey?
Yeah, well, certainly an important part of our journey is developing and evolving the talent for the challenges that lay ahead. It's not good enough just to say, hey, we can solve this business problem today, but you want to create an environment where you have talented people who are thinking about the opportunities and the challenges for tomorrow. So that's definitely front and center in our conversations. I think the other thing I would say to you is, because of the nature of who we are, we pretty much use a little bit of everything everywhere, because we need to understand the implications of it. And I think that may be unusual or possibly even unique to VMware in that regard. And we're always finding new things to consider. It's not just about the technology, it's about understanding the business problems that you can solve. So we're very much in the mud, if you will, getting dirty, and understanding what we can possibly make out of all of the potential that exists.
Jason, I certainly appreciate your sharing with us all what VMware is doing in the trenches, in the real world, and helping its customers get through the multi-cloud chaos to a better place of leveraging multi-cloud for good. Thank you so much, Jason.
Not at all, Glenn. It's good to be with you, and have a great day.
Great, thank you.